The sons of Zebedee don't come off looking too good in today's gospel, do they? In fact, they come off looking downright disgraceful, for the simple reason that that is precisely how they acted, disgracefully. Now, if you think that's rather harsh, I think you might change your mind if the gospel reading had started just a few verses earlier. If it had, you would have heard our Lord telling the apostles how the Jewish rulers are plotting against him, how he will be handed over and killed. He told them, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit upon him, scourge him, and put him to death. But after 3 days he will rise." It is immediately after this that James and John come up to Jesus to ask to sit at his right and his left. The gospel account is so succinct, however, that much of the pathos, the emotion, and the drama of the encounter, as well as the unbelievable request of the two apostles, is somewhat muted. But imagine a similar situation. Suppose you were diagnosed unexpectedly with a serious disease. You discover you're gravely ill, and although the symptoms aren't bad yet, you haven't long to live. You gather your closest friends around you and break the news to them. They're shocked, of course. But imagine the very next thing they do is ask you a question which they pose in all seriousness. That question being, "Can we have all your stuff after you're dead?" How would that make you feel? That has to be something like what our Lord felt at the question posed by the sons of Zebedee. They were probably ashamed of themselves even before they asked Jesus the question, and well they should be, though not so much as to curb their lust for power. But such was their relationship with the Lord at this point in their discipleship. They couldn't see beyond their own self-interest. All they thought about was what Jesus could do for them. Those in real estate tell us the most important things when it comes to selling a house, I'm sure you've heard this, are location, location, location. It's a truism. Now, a truism is something that's completely obvious to everyone, so obvious that it's not worth mentioning, except for the fact that we often need to be reminded of truisms because we often forget they are true. Our fallible human nature contains some amusing ironies, doesn't it? And just as there are truisms in real estate, so too are there truisms in sanctity, in holiness, in our relationship with the Lord, which are all simply three ways of saying the same thing. And the top three things we need to remember with respect to having a truly intimate relationship with our Lord are humility, humility, and humility. But we knew that already, didn't we? As St. James reminds us in his epistle, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. But how can we tell if we are humble? It's a legitimate question, but come to think of it, that's probably not how a really humble and truly humble person would approach it. I wonder if I'm humble. Such a person would rather, I think, not worry about whether they were humble, but try to detect instead any sign of pride they might have in their life. St. Francis de Sales has much to say about this in his book, Introduction to the Devout Life. Some of us may, for instance, tend to pride when we consider all the many gifts, talents, or blessings that have been bestowed upon us. The overabundance of I love me social media sites and the innumerable selfies and intolerable self-promotion posted thereon indicate this just may be, in fact, an issue for some of us. To temper this, St. Francis asks those so afflicted to consider that, quote, mules do not cease to be clumsy, stinking beasts just because they're used to carry princely luxuries or royal treasures. The Blessed Virgin Mary herself, when she received grace upon grace, the grace of the Incarnation heaped upon the grace of her Immaculate Conception, is our model of a response devoid of any trace of pride. At the Annunciation, she said, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done unto me according to thy word." Our Lady is the ideal, the heights for which we seek, as it were, in humility. For every grace that was bestowed upon her, both the trials and the joys, she responded to with even more humility. She knew who she was in relation to God, for humility is rooted in the truth. She never considered her exalted position with respect to others, but rather always put their needs above her own. Consider her words, "They have no wine," and how she supported and suffered with our Lord during his passion. But how might you and I detect pride in ourselves? St. Francis again gives us some practical tips. For instance, many of us speak poorly of ourselves. "Oh, that wasn't such a big deal," or "Anyone could have done as well as I did, maybe better." But how would you feel if someone honestly agreed with you? "You're right. That wasn't such a big deal. And there are lots of people who could have done it much better." If we take offense that people take us at our word, we're prideful. If we try to run away and hide so that people will have to seek us out, if we take the lowest place, say, the last place in line for communion, in order to be noticed, that's pride. There is no pretense in authentic humility. The key to authentic humility lies in obedience and doing God's will, St. Francis tells us. It is God's will that we should be perfect and imitate him to the utmost of our ability, all the while neither pretending to be wise nor pretending to be foolish. Humility is rooted in truth. Our objective in life is that simple. Actually doing it requires all the grace our Lord is willing to bestow upon us. Let me leave you with a final thought. Since true humility is rooted in truth, Our Lady was not engaging in rhetoric or pretense when she said in her Magnificat that the Lord has looked with favor on his lowly servant. She really and truly considered herself to be a lowly servant, and so she is with respect to God. That being the case, how much more so is that true for you and me?